If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
We are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Jeff, MD, 26-year CIA case officer, affectionately known in our circle as 007, and we know he's not from Winnipeg. We've been told too many times now by the Canadians. 007 is not British. He's actually from Winnipeg, Canada, so take that for whatever it's worth. And my good friend Randy Nance below him, combat wounded, Green Beret back home in Texas, and below him, S2 joins us tonight. Good to see y'all, or good to see your avatar, S2. And our good friend
Agent 30-6 to you.
Oh, that's gonna stick. Hey, first poll of the night. Agent 30-6, if you think we should hang that on S2, because I love it, put them on live chat, whatever platform you're in. If you don't, just go ahead.
One.
Yeah. And if you don't like it, go watch somebody else's podcast, because we're rolling with that. But I did just write it down. When I write it down, S2, it's official. That means that it's getting locked in. So speaking of agents, Khalid Muhammad at Command 11 in Pakistan, Agent 711, is still under the weather. He went and saw a doctor last night, got some meds on board. Hopefully by tomorrow night, he's feeling better. Look at this. Look at the love, S2. You got
I know.
You got one.
I know, right?
Reeled it in.
That's awesome. That's awesome. By the way, somebody, I can't remember if it was on X or if it was in one of our Signal chats, said that they nominated Khalid to be Charlie, and that these three girls were going to be Charlie's Angels, and that was going to be their new code name. I was like, oh my God, that's going to go straight to his head. And it did. So he would probably prefer to be called Charlie over Angels.
I guess we'll see as the days come by. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. All right. So tonight we've got the next episode in our Long War series, and we're going to be discussing American cities, 10 to 15 American cities post 9/11 2.0 attacks, the doctrine for a new America, building lasting governance. But before we get to that, we've got to do the conflicted question of the night. If you're not familiar with this, conflictedthegame.com. 14 card decks in post-apocalyptic scenarios. 99% of the questions have an element of morality to them, hence the name Conflicted. S2, take it away.
Okay, before I do this, let's get started with this early and let's smash some thumbs and some like buttons. Here we go. Sebastian is faced with a decision to continue to serve his country or take care of his family. Where would you personally draw the line between serving society and taking care of your family? Are you a traitor to your profession if you leave your post to protect and care for your family?
Good question.
That's pretty easy. That's an easy one.
It is. It's an easy one. It's something that we've discussed in the past. We either did this question a couple of years ago or one that was very similar to it. But I'm still be interested in hearing everybody's answers. I think where y'all are going to go. But let's get some breaking news out first. So breaking news, Pete Hegseth announces Operation Southern Spear, led by Joint Task Force, Southern Spear, and Southcom. This mission defends our homeland, removes narco-terrorists from our hemisphere, secures our homeland from the drugs that are killing our people. The Western Hemisphere is America's neighborhood, and we will protect it. So I've been up to my ass in alligators all day with work. Did not have an opportunity to dive into this deeply. Did any of the three of you have a chance to study up on this a little bit?
I did not.
No.
This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Okay, so let me do this then. Jeff, I want to get your take on the buildup of our military in Puerto Rico in particular, and getting ready to take on the narco terrorists, combined with the Europeans saying, one, they're not going to share their intel with us anymore, and two, that we're breaking international law because we're punishing these guys without them being held liable in a court of law.
Okay, first of all, for the Europeans, I'd say go pound sand. We don't need their permission to defend our country. And that's exactly what we're doing. The narco-terrorists are killing 100,000 Americans every year. We lose more people in a year to fentanyl and drugs than we did in Vietnam and war on terror combined. So screw that. It's in international waters. I look at them as pirates.
Yeah.
You do not need somebody's permission to take out pirates. You just take them out.
That's a great analogy, Jeff.
So screw it. They're pirates.
Yeah, great analogy. I want to throw one thing in here before I go to Randy and then S2, and listen closely, because some people have sent us some nasty emails on this topic because they didn't listen clearly. 80% of the fentanyl that has been captured by law enforcement agencies in America since January 1st has been laced with xylazine. Xylazine is a horse tranquilizer. If you take xylazine, it will essentially slow your body down to the point that you will die. It stops brain activity, heart, lungs, everything, okay? So the point is that if you have Narcan in your EDC bag and somebody is exposed to fentanyl, there's an 80% chance they are also exposed to xylazine, and the Narcan will do precisely zero with regards to xylazine. So don't send me any hate mail saying I'm an idiot because Narcan works for a fact. Narcan works against opiates, and synthetic opiates like fentanyl doesn't do a dang thing when it comes to horse tranquilizers. And why am I mentioning it now? If these scumbags are going to lace already deadly drugs with even more deadly drugs where there is no, fix for ingesting xylazine, then we should be bombing the shit out of them everywhere that they come at us from. So with that being said, Randy,
They should be getting stopped at the Panama Canal.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Randy, go, your chance to take a swing at this one.
Well, I agree with you guys. I think it's ridiculous. For one, Europe, they're about to need to be saved themselves. But really, we're going to have to save ourselves first this time before we come help you guys. So they really, just Jeff mentioned, they have no business telling us what to do or what our business is. And as we all know, whether it's the leaders here, or we'll say the national leaders in all those countries, if they weren't getting a piece of it, drugs wouldn't be going into all these countries to begin with. And the proof is, a few months back when the journalist made it back into a private room where Marcon or whoever he is from France and a couple of other leaders from other nations had a big bag of Coke on the table that they were going to be using. And so, that just tells you right there that now we know why they want them to stop bombing them. Hell, it's hurting their business.
Well, let me just quick refresher on that, and I'll see if I can find some media on that shortly. But basically, you had Macron and two other leaders from Europe sitting around a table, and the press was there, and they realized their bag of cocaine was sitting on the table. So Macron kind of snuck his hand out and slowly slid it back like this, thinking that nobody saw what he was doing. And of course, the press caught him red-handed, and that's not fake news, by the way. S2, narco terrorists.
Yeah, I kind of have a question about this because we had an Operation Southern Spear that was started in January of this year. So is this the same operation, or is it just a continuation of the one that's already in progress?
Good question.
As far as the rest of this goes, yeah, bomb the shit out of them. By all means, do it 3 times, sir.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
But I also wanted to add something else too. There were some dots that I connected the other night with Khalid, and one of the things that we find when we start looking at all the people that are screaming about all of this, about us bombing the boats and everything, they all have one common denominator. They're all United Nations, whatever you want to call them, countries.
Okay.
And one of the dots that I connected the other night had to do with the United Nations, and wondering if a lot of this that we're seeing right now has drawing us to a conclusion of withdrawing from the United Nations, with Trump going around talking to all of these other United Nations countries and everything. If the United States pulls out of the United Nations and he gets all of these other countries to do that as well, the United Nations becomes no more.
If we leave the United Nations, there is no more United Nations.
I mean, we've been
If the other
paying for it
countries
all
do
this
it or
time,
not.
right?
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, but you get what I'm
Well,
saying is if there's no more support for the United Nations, then they're done. They have no chance of coming back. It's like the WHO. When we got out of the WHO, they're still complaining that they don't have enough money. So bleed them dry.
well,
Couldn't
they,
agree
they
more.
need to go the route of the League of Nations.
Yep.
When's the last time you heard about the League of Nations? Well,
Yeah.
not since
Long
the
time.
1920s when they went
I was
away.
going to say like almost never.
Right. I want to quickly mention we're running a special on annual memberships, 20% off annual memberships for Guardians until midnight tomorrow night, code TW20, survivaldispatch.news. I'll give you a little bit more information later in the podcast. So moving on to the next one, I want to give a shout out to Apex Guard. So this guy wrote an awesome book on 9/11 2.0. It's not a heavy read. I actually meant to grab it from my nightstand before we started tonight to show you. It might be a quarter of an inch thick, but it's a really good read. A lot of great information, and golly, check that out. The banner from last night is still scrolling across the screen. We should probably hide that. Mike Glover will not be joining us tonight. He joined us last night. So anyway, here's a post from Apex Guard. It was made in October, but it's great information. So 9/11 2.0 Al-Qaeda includes an October 7th style attack during their next attack tactics. This is worth paying attention to. There's some great detail here. At least 10 cities simultaneously, which we've been sharing for many, many months. 10 to 15 tier 2 cities, which is a population of 100 to 500,000. Fight to the death, swarming attacks, attackers on drugs, automatic weapons, at least 15 to 20 cells per team with backup teams, 5 to 7 man teams, and 8 to 10 man teams. So just do the math on this. You are looking at somewhere in the range of 150 to 200 terrorists running amok in 10 to 15 tier 2 American cities, simultaneously slaughtering people while they're dressed up as first responders. And we've mentioned multiple times, there have been all kinds of break-ins in the past 18 months and dry cleaners where first responder uniforms have been stolen. There's been a rash of break-ins at National Guard armories and uniforms being stolen. There were 3 the month before last, I believe, in Tennessee. And the reason it caught my attention is it said total value of goods stolen $3,000. And I thought, what the heck? I mean, that's not even, a handful of rifles. And then I went and read it, and it was all uniforms and boots. And I think they've clued into the fact that we've clued into the fact that they can't show up and pretend to be a first responder or troops with a set of Nikes on or something like that. The footwear has been something that's given them away many times. Not a new tactic that they're using here. Trained in 360-degree ballistic shoot houses, training like terrorists had in Fallujah, dressed up as first responders, simultaneously attack on the aviation industry. Let me touch on that ever so briefly. So ISIS and other groups under the Islamic Army banner are the ones who are basically managing all these sleeper cells that are hitting 10, 15, 20 targets simultaneously inside of 10, 15 American cities. When that happens, and when the secondary attack, so in other words, they attack the first soft target, and then the first responders show up, the secondary and tertiary attacks are even worse because their goal is to kill as many first responders as they can. While this is going on, Al-Qaeda, who wants the big show, they want the big news, of the attack, they go to the airport and they hijack 2 or 3 planes on the ground, because it's a whole lot easier to hijack on the ground than it is in the air these days. And then they do what Osama bin Laden called the Bojangles. And what that means is those planes will take off, fly at low altitude over the cities, and explode over the cities, leaving, human body parts and plane parts all over the place. just for the complete terror that it will cause amongst people. Back to Apex Guard's list here. Attacking veterans. So they have specifically said that they want to attack GWAT veterans, especially officers, as well as NCOs, to make them pay retribution for how they felt in their own countries. Attack on Washington's soft targets, trained on supermarket shopping complexes, trained on nightclubs, churches. Hezbollah, Iraq has a $15,000 bounty on Sarah Adams. It's much higher than that now. Again, this post was in October. They've actually threatened to decapitate her and broadcast that all over the interwebs. HQs at police stations, they managed to take over. So they want to take over police stations. HQs at military objects, they managed to take over. Military objects obtain more weapons and ammo, starting recruiting from local Islamic communities, again, 2 months ago, this list. Hospital takeovers, which we've covered ad nauseum. Agent 711 has been the point man on bringing that to light. IEDs, VBIEDs, which he doesn't mention here, but they're a big part of the arsenal now, vehicle-borne IEDs, so they're much larger. Think Timothy McVeigh in Oklahoma. Spontaneous decision-making, which is also countered with Mumbai 2008, and I believe yesterday was the anniversary of Paris 2015. The command and control guys who are in Afghanistan will be monitoring news and social media and having these sleeper cells pivot based on what the response is and where the enhanced opportunities lie versus where they'll see more pushback. Regular suicide vests. So the reason he put that in there is because they now have these so-called invisible suicide vests that are plastic with chemicals inside of them that can't be detected unless you have an MM wave device at airports, which most of our airports don't have. But this is with regular suicide vests. The shrapnel in them is a hard plastic. Actually, let me move back up here. Attacking public transportation, roadblocks to ambush first responders, booby traps. Terrorists know how to locate devices. First responders move in, wave 2 blows up. Mumbai overall duration was 4 days from November 26, November 29, 2008. Al-Qaeda invitation highlights invisible suicide vests. There's no metal, chemicals with suicide vests, shrapnel in hard plastic, wrapped in silicone, tested bombs hidden in fake pregnancy bumps, made in a laboratory, goes through the magnometer, airport security. You have to have the millimeter wave scanners, as it points out below that. 911 system is going to crash due to the number of calls. There's the copy of his book. Highly recommend. And this was put together with Sarah's input as well, by the way. It's available on Amazon. I can't remember what I paid for it. It's not a large sum of money, but there it is. Al-Qaeda 2.0, the upcoming attacks on the United States and Europe unveiled. So this attack is the crux of everything that we've been doing in our long war series, detailing what's going to happen in the attacks, but then what happens afterwards. We're somewhere around episode maybe 62, 63 out of 144 episodes that Clede and I wrote on this subject that we'll talk about tonight. I'm going to go same order as last time, Jeff. Anything else you would like to comment on or add to Apex Guard's post?
Well, I think it's very thorough, and people should, get the book and read it if they really, if they're interested in being prepared and what to expect. Us reading it's not going to be nearly as useful as them reading it.
Agreed. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. I forgot to mention one thing, by the way, is that at Apex Guard HQ, go on X and follow them. If you are in Manhattan or you have friends or family in Manhattan, reach out to him. He has hard intel that he's not releasing to the general public. He's only releasing to people in Manhattan regarding imminent threats there. So I highly suggest you reach out if you're in that area. But Randy, your thoughts on the sophistication of this attack and how underprepared we are?
Well, to me, again, it just goes back to, how the level of planning that it takes to do this, the kind of organization, the money and everything else. And it just lends to, terrorists have always had their way, right? But now they're more professional, I would say. So that's kind of, whether it be more training, they've linked into some of the real networks, who really knows? But regardless, this is where we are. And as Jeff said, it's very thorough. So I hope people pay attention because, that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, there's no good news in this at all. S2, you want to take a swing at those?
It jives with my analysis paper that I wrote. What was it? I guess almost 2 years ago now. There's a lot more detail coming out about it, but basically, to Randy's point, they're training more to be like mercs now than they are soldiers.
Yep.
So when you're a merc, you're not beholden to any particular agency, government, or anything, and the gloves come off. Yeah, your money is the only thing you're beholden to.
Yeah.
In this case, it's their religious ideology.
Yep.
Yeah, religious / political / government structure, everything, right? It's the whole ball of wax. All right, moving on to the next one here. Somebody mentioned this recently on our podcast too. I can't remember. Was it you, Randy, by chance, with regards to the march in Dearborn? Can't remember who it was. I want to make sure I give credit to whoever it was, but
I don't remember if I brought that up. I know we've talked about it, but I don't remember.
yeah, I just can't remember who brought it up. I was hoping to give them credit, but my sometimers is kicking in. I don't have Alzheimer's. I got sometimers. Sometimes I remember, sometimes I forget.
Well, if you're talking about the beginning, I was talking about the ones you're even seeing up in New York City now. Now that just since that guy's been elected,
Yeah,
they've already had some displays out there. But of course, we've been watching Dearborn, Michigan now for several months
or longer. So November 8th. Yeah. November.
Well, I mean, as far as all these marches and flags,
yeah,
we've been watching them for years. But yes, man, it's really ramped up in the last few months of looking at what that activity looks like. When I look at it, I can't even recognize America when you're watching that stuff. And I go right back to being overseas because that's the same kind of thing I saw.
2004, crappy old GPS could not lead me to the Ritz-Carlton across the interstate from the Ford campus in Dearborn. I was only a mile away from it, and I stopped and asked the cop for directions, and he said, "What the hell are you doing over here? Get out of this parking lot." There was a cop in every single line of parking in this parking lot, and he said, "White people don't come in here. This is Muslim territory." He escorted me over to the Ritz-Carlton that wasn't showing up on the GPS, and he said, "What are you here for?" I said, "I'm here for work, Ford across the road." He said, "Don't go over there. Just stay out of there." That's why you saw such a heavy police presence. That was 2004 timeframe. Anyway, November 18th, brave Christians are marching on Dearborn, Michigan. Thousands of patriots will peacefully gather at 3 p.m. Schaefer Road and Michigan Avenue and march on Islamic Dearborn City Hall. We must burn the Quran and declare America is Christian. 36 seconds.
Jesus is king. No Talmud, no Quran. America's a Christian country.
Oh my God, we'll have our home again. My God, we'll have our home. My blood or sweat will get there yet. My God, we'll have our home. In our own towns, we're foreigners now. Our names are spat and cursed.
These people.
Dude. The more I see Jake Lang with some of his stuff and his videos that he comes out, the more I'm starting to feel like he's in leadership for the Patriot Front.
Quite possibly. I met him at SHOT Show last January. Of course, we'll be at SHOT Show this coming January as well, barring the world being set on fire. He's a pretty interesting guy to discuss or to talk to in person. I'll tell you also, I haven't had a chance to talk to Stu, who is an amazing man, a speaker and leader, is Nick Freitas. That guy
I love Nick.
I met him at Mar-a-Lago 2 nights ago. He is POTUS material. He gave the best speech of the night. He used no teleprompter. He didn't have anything written notes in front of him. The conviction that man has is unbelievable. If he's JD's running mate in 2028, I think that puts him on the path to the White House. But with that being said, Jeff, I want to come to you. What do you think the police response is going to be in Dearborn?
Well, I think it's going to be pretty heavy. And, these kind of protests, yes, you have an absolute right to do them. Doesn't mean you should. Muslims have a right to come in and burn the Bible. But how would you feel if a bunch of Muslims came into your neighborhood and burned the Bible you probably wouldn't be too thrilled about it, and I don't expect they will be either. There's gonna, if they do this, there's gonna be trouble, and people are gonna say you instigated it, which is true. It doesn't mean you get to beat them up, but they'll end up getting beat up, and it's sometimes you don't poke the bear, and I think there's better ways to go about it, because to be honest, when you do stuff like this, what's the difference between you and the radical Muslims?
Well, I'm going to be the contrarian here. We are past the point of no return. We're past the Rubicon. There will be no reconciliation. These assholes are going to keep gunning for us. They want to take over our country. There's nothing's getting resolved nicely from here on out. So I would rather take the first swing as opposed to letting them have the first swing. But Randy, give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I think Jeff's right. If they go marching up there in their little parade, they probably won't have enough people, is what I'm thinking. There's going to be a lot of Muslims there, and there will be trouble. There'll be bloodshed over that. There'll be no doubt about that. But I'm also in the same boat that you are. You know what I mean? I understand what our rights are and what our country is and what our laws are. But when you have somebody invading you, the gloves are off. The gloves are off. And until I've told people since probably 2015, and it's just coming to fruition. We're watching it right now in Europe, real time. And the 4 years of Biden definitely sped up our time frame here in the United States, and watching what they're doing in Dearborn, Michigan, which I just mentioned earlier, that, I only saw over in other countries where they actually are from in their country. They do that kind of thing. But, what I'm talking about with the flags and all the little stuff, that's just a very reminiscent of what I saw on active duty. So to see that here in the United States, it's not a good thing. I don't agree with it. I think at some point we're going to have to get nasty and ugly and kick them out and remove every last one of them, however that be.
Well, Nick Freitas has spoken at length on this topic since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And his opinion is we cannot kowtow to these assholes any longer, because we've given them an inch and they've taken many, many miles, and they are not going to take their foot off the gas. And you got to
just go off past history. What have they done in every other country that they start doing this kind of thing?
Yep.
As we saw with them kneeling in the streets, they don't do that in their own countries to go pray, because they'll get run the hell over like anybody else that goes out in that street. But they'll come do it here or in other countries where they're trying to take over. My point was, I told people since 2015, the Muslims are going to come for us at some point. It's a fact. It's a fact. It's because it's the way this whole thing is driven, and we cannot coincide with them. And the more of them that we bring in and let come into this country is just going to cause more of a problem. It's just that simple.
Yeah. So before you go, S2, I'll just throw this out there. The balkanization of America is well underway. So when you see states where there's virtually no chance of somebody from a different party being voted into office from gerrymandering, et cetera, those are the first steps of balkanization. So in other words, states that are hard left, hard right. I believe that balkanization is getting ready to accelerate. It already is accelerating. And I think at some point in time, when the battle lines are clear between blue states, red states, or as Randy likes to say, and I use this all the time, those of us who are real Americans, other scumbags, that you now have physical lines drawn. And while none of us want to see a civil war, it's coming. Mark my words, it is coming. There's not one instance in recorded history of diametrically opposed cultures occupying the same geography without one of them taking out the other. This is our country. End of story. And if we don't take action, we're going to end up just like Great Britain and the other countries. As Randy said, we're going to have to go rescue their asses. S2, my watch is going off, by the way.
The physical lines have already been drawn.
Agreed.
They're already drawn. I drew up the map on it about the same time that I did my paper on the AQ 2.0. And you can see it very clearly where they've been placing these people that they brought into this country. And that essentially draws those lines. The Ohio River is a main tributary that draws between those lines. As far as what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan, I think you're going to have a lot of agitation going on from the outside coming in. Antifa was just declared four groups of Antifa were just declared foreign terrorist organizations today. And I do believe that you will see Antifa coming from all over the country to support the Muslims because that's what they do. I think you'll see all of these nut jobs coming out of the woodwork trying to instigate something. And if we see Patriot Front show up there, yeah, it's going to be a hotbed, really.
Yeah.
Or if Blood Tribe shows up. Blood Tribe shows up, it's going to be gloves off.
Right. Let me address this question. James asked, rescue Europe, why? So Pakistan, 95, 96% Muslim. They're a nuclear power, but they do not have thermonuclear warheads. They do not have ICBMs. They've got missiles that can travel somewhere around 2,500 miles. You have to be over 3,300 to be classified as an ICBM. But again, they don't have thermonuclear warheads. Why do we have to rescue Europe? Because the Muslim takeover of France and England in particular, they don't have to have 50% of the population. They've got 10% of the population, and they're taking over branches of government faster than you can imagine. So what happens when both countries are under Muslim control? We sold the missiles the Trident missiles to the UK that are on their submarines, 8 nuclear powered submarines that can park anywhere in the world and deliver a thermonuclear hit anywhere in the world. And then France is even worse. France has the full triad, meaning air, land, and sea thermonuclear weapons. That's why it matters. If we don't rescue France and England in particular, we will have global nuclear powers under the direct control of our enemies who are sworn to kill us. That's why it matters. And that's why we have to rescue Europe, because they're clearly not capable of doing it themselves.
It's Iran's wet dream.
Exactly. So next one up, the Trump administration is now requiring SNAP recipients to prove they are actively searching for a job to receive benefits. And Ian Yeager says, I voted for this. We've kind of briefly touched on this in the past, Jeff, your thoughts on making people work for their benefits if they're able-bodied?
Absolutely. In fact, if they're really able-bodied, they shouldn't get any. You know, if you're a 32-year-old male and you're not in a damn wheelchair, get a damn job.
Jeff, I saw a video today where there's this girl and she's, whatever, on TikTok or some bullshit like that. And she's complaining about how she doesn't have her SNAP money and stuff. And somebody compliments her on her fingernails. Yeah. And she's like, yeah. And they said, how much do you pay for that? And she's like, not that much. It wasn't bad. It was $85. And then there's this other girl who's around the same age, has kids. And she says, look at my nails. I don't have any nails. We spend all of the money that we earn to look after our children. I don't have $85 to go spend on my nails. Whereas the other girl was freaking out saying that she deserved all of this.
And all of these women and some men who do these videos on TikTok about how horrible life is without SNAP, they're all shooting it on a $1,000 smartphone while sitting in their $30,000 car.
Right.
And if they're male, they have Air Jordans on, and we know what those cost.
Yeah. And if they're female, they've got the hair extensions and they got the fingernails done and everything else.
You know what we haven't seen, guys? We haven't seen a tranny collecting EBT.
Oh.
Well, how could you know? Because trans women are women. All those women could be trannies for all we know.
That's right.
My God. So I think I told Jeff this, but I know I didn't tell the other guys that I saw a thing where there's a school now teaching youngins that transgender women are women from the age of birth with their sexual reproductive organs on the outside instead of the inside. That
sounds like something that came out of Washington State.
Sounds like something that came out of Mad Magazine.
Absolute freaking insanity. I'm looking at the timer and I want to make sure we get to the main subject as fast as possible. So, Randy, I'm going to go to the next one here for you. This guy's such a brain dead piece of shit. Brandon Johnson is asking the UN to intervene in U.S. affairs and stop ICE from enforcing immigration law. Tom Homan, he's just proving that he's not that smart. The UN helped fund the mass migration. Hit that button if you appreciate the work Tom Homan is doing. I've worked with Tom Holman before. We worked on the Border 911 project. I had an opportunity to speak with him 2 nights ago at Mar-a-Lago. He delivered a great speech, by the way, that he's on fire. And God bless Tom Holman. But 2 minutes and 7 seconds. I'm not playing the whole 2 minutes. This guy, seriously, like, he is just not the sharpest knife in the drawer. See if we can get this to play.
Listen to this.
The federal government's immigration enforcement has.
Look at those eyes. I mean, is there even like any remote semblance of intelligence behind those blank eyes?
Been marked by violence and an assault on the dignity of all Chicagoans. I call on this council to hold the federal government of the United States to the same standards of accountability you apply elsewhere in the world. No country should be above international law. I urge the Human Rights Council to consider additional measures of accountability, including a special session to examine the worsening human rights crisis in the United States.
Okay, that's all I can listen. I can't take that guy's shit.
Well, maybe somebody should tell him we pay for all that stuff.
Right.
How are they going to enforce it on us when we're the ones that pay for it all? We send there's a lot of soldiers that get attached to them. I mean, the United States has been floating that boat since it's been around, as far as I know. So go cry to the UN all you want, but maybe if you just took care of your city, you wouldn't have this problem. But I mean, this guy's a real douchebag, but it's no different than the SNAP benefits. I mean, I want to know, did they really go from 19 million before Biden's years to 40 something million just in those 4 years? Where did all those people come from? I guarantee there's a bunch of them in Chicago, but you know, I just don't understand this guy, or like all the politicians during the shutdown, all the Democrats come out and say, well, they want to go down the list. You know, the Republicans have all this and they're the ones that are keeping it shut down. Until we hold people accountable for just bold-faced lying on national TV or going on, you know, certainly if you're an official like he is, and you go on the news and you go on to social media and you're posting this stuff, when you know it's a damn well lie, there should be some sort of accountability. And until there is, people are just going to be able to say whatever they want, because there's no one that's going to, in the media, certainly if you're a Democrat, no one's going to fact check you ever.
You didn't get the memo? There's no crime problem in Chicago. So
well, that's what he says. That's what he
no
says.
problem. It's
a question I have about this is, how does the UN view Brandon Johnson? I think they pretty much would view him as a flea on the ass of a dog's asshole.
Well, I don't know if that's how they view him or not, but there's a pretty good description. I mean, I can't fault you for that.
Yep.
So this one's for you, S2. Democrat-run cities hire inspectors to snoop in residents' garbage cans to make sure they're recycling properly.
What?
Yeah.
That is unlawful in so many ways. That the police can do it, but they have to have a warrant to do it.
Actually, no, they don't.
Oh,
That's right. They changed that because now if it's out on the curb, it's on public view.
Yeah, once
That's
it hits
right.
the curb, it's no longer yours.
That's public property. Yep.
Yeah.
But they are not officers of the law. That's the point.
Well, it's a regulatory thing. It's not a criminal thing. They're just
who takes that job though?
Then you just do like I do, and you just don't fucking recycle at all. You tell them to kiss my ass because it costs more than it does to actually recycle anything.
They don't actually recycle anything. 90% of the crap in the recycle bins ends up in the landfill.
Correct. Yeah. We have that situation in our county, and we have for years.
I only like it because it gives me 2 trash cans.
There you go. Something like 15 to 20% of the stuff that's put at the curb here in Central Florida actually goes somewhere to be recycled into something else. The rest of it just goes into the landfill.
It's usually glass, colored glass, and cardboard.
All right, next one up for you, Jeff, from General Mike Flynn, posted 2 days ago. I had a chance to speak with General Flynn on Tuesday night, as I mentioned already. What a great man, great American. And I'll just repeat this for those of you who didn't hear our podcast last night. General Flynn, when he addressed the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago Tuesday night, was very succinct in warning everybody in the room that the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency that he headed up, has hard evidence of 9/11 2.0 happening in the next 90-ish days or so, which was the original timeline before Ramadan. And when I say original timeline, that's because the damage that Pakistan did to the Islamic Army's command and control may postpone it a little bit from mid-March to mid-May. But I spoke to General Flynn afterwards, and I've been working with his assistant for a couple of years now, and she introduced me to General Flynn. This is the guy with the 9/11 2.0 podcast. And his very first thing he said to me is he said, I was the head of the DIA, right? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, we have hard evidence. It's coming, and it's way worse than anybody could possibly imagine. So reading his post here, and then this one's coming to you, Jeff. On this Veterans Day, never forget the war is deception, Sun Tzu, which means that misleading the enemy is a fundamental principle of warfare. Adversaries will feign weakness, appear inactive, and create false impressions. Deception is also used to control the enemy's perceptions, lure them into traps, and create opportunities for a strategic advantage. Fifth generation warfare is real, and it's been underway for quite some time, but it sure has accelerated in recent years.
Well, what is amazing to me is how prescient Sun Tzu was. I mean, that was hundreds of years ago he wrote that.
Yep.
And he was talking about the wars in China, which most Americans have no freaking clue about. But damn if he wasn't right on just about everything.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to speed things up a little bit, but I want to give you guys a chance to weigh in. Do you want to add anything, General Flynn's take, Brandy?
Well, I'll just say the same thing, Jeff. I mean, General So's book's been around this long for a reason, that even the greatest military minds of today read that book for that reason, because it's that good. And as even Jeff mentioned, he wrote it hundreds of years ago. And, there's a reason why we still use that book. And, I couldn't agree more.
Fair enough. S2.
I'm sorry, I'm yelling at Eric Swalwell.
That's easy to do.
Yeah, well, he basically said, if Trump forced underage or sex with an underage girl, should he still be our president? I said, well, if you slept with a Chinese spy, should you still be in Congress?
Yeah, that's exactly right. She helped him get elected too.
Yeah. I forgot where we were here.
General Flynn.
Oh yeah, I read that post. I think I read that post last week.
2 days. He posted it 2 days ago on Veterans Day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, enough said. I mean, we've got all of this stuff going on right now, and we've got all of the propaganda. My God, the propaganda has just been so high since Veterans Day. I mean, it's off the freaking charts. And I hope everybody's discernment angel is sitting on their shoulder, because there's a lot of fake crap running around out there right now.
True story. So here's a crappy development from Sarah Adams. The FBI tried pulling my clearance in May unsuccessfully. The new FBI is no different than the old, and of course they will retaliate because no one cleaned house. I know where we all stand on this, so I'm going to move on to the next one here. 9/11 2.0 is coming. Pakistan's Joint Chief of Staff General Shamshad issued a warning that should have shaken every capital of the world. Yet the world stays silent, refusing to see what is now unfolding in plain sight. Afghanistan has once again become the epicenter of global terrorism, a command hub reborn, rearmed, and reconnected under new leadership. Hamza bin Laden and Saif al-Adel, two names that now carry the weight of an upcoming storm, are systematically recasting Afghanistan into the operational heart of Al-Qaeda's next chapter, where Zawahiri led through ideology, Adel and Hamza lead through action. Together, they have unified the Taliban, the Haqqani network, TTP, BLA, BLF, and remnants of ISIS affiliates under one command structure, disciplined, coordinated, and focused. From Kandahar's safe houses to Tora Bora's tunnels, training camps are active. New fighters are being indoctrinated from around the world, and funds are flowing through the TTA, U.S. money, and cross-border smuggling. The blueprint for this new campaign is precise and ruthless. Al-Adel's 2024 doctrine, "This is Gaza, a war of existence, not a war of borders," is more than rhetoric. It's a global battle plan. It calls for mass recruitment, resource mobilization, and the fusion of regional conflicts into one transnational offensive. Afghanistan is now the launching ground for a new wave of asymmetric warfare designed to break states from within. 9/11 2.0 isn't a threat. It's a prepared strategy for large-scale devastation. It's built to hit at the same time across multiple cities in the US, Europe, and Asia, using suicide bombings, vehicle attacks, drone swarms, and cyber strikes to blind emergency services and spread chaos. Al-Qaeda operatives are on the move, using encrypted apps and AI-driven propaganda to recruit online. Afghan networks now coordinate funding and logistics for a two-front campaign. Sleeper cells targeting Western countries and recent attempts to activate cells in Baltistan and Kashmir in coordination with India have also been made. The U.S. southern border it says is under infiltration by jihadist operatives, was under infiltration. They got plenty of them across the line, though, signaling a direct threat to homeland security across Europe. The danger is equally grave, with sleeper cells embedded within migrant flows ready to be activated. Arrests in Germany, Sweden, and France confirm these networks are not only active but coordinated and resilient, operating largely under the radar. The goal is simple and brutal: overwhelm first responders, spark mass panic, and break government's ability to act. If parts of this plan succeed, casualties and disruption would dwarf recent terror waves. The U.S. with NATO countries would almost certainly retaliate hard, striking Afghanistan and turning the country into a new battlefield, a response that would spread instability, displacement, and violence across Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Central Asia. Pakistan stands at the front line of the storm due to its geopolitical position and geographic terrain, which allows these groups to move freely along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. The recent surge in terrorist activity, combined with complex operational planning, shows that AQ is in full control of the unified terrorist front. General Shamshad's warning is not only a prophecy, it is a statement of fact. The indicators are visible. The plans are moving, and the world's complacency is their greatest weapon. Pakistan stands awake in a world still asleep. If this warning goes unanswered, the next wave of fire will not stop at the mountains of Afghanistan. It will sweep across continents, leaving the world in the same shock and disbelief that followed September 11th, but on an even larger, more devastating scale. So Randy and S2, I don't know if y'all know this, but Jeff and I stumbled across a post from a guy, I think it was last week, might have been the week before, where he said, if you read at 1.5 times speed, so 50% faster, you learn 15 times faster. That's a known fact now. The faster you read, or the faster you play something back, the faster that you learn. It's an amazing thing.
Huh.
I'm just joking, of course.
Sounds logical.
Dumbass.
The more information you take in, the faster you learn.
Not 15 times. You got to be a dumbass to say something like that. I was just repeating what he said, by the way. But I'm going to give everybody one last swing at this topic. Then we're going to dive into the main topic. Jeff, global.
Well, I mean, he's just confirming what we've been talking about for weeks now.
Months.
And again, I think he may be right when he says Pakistan's the only one who's awake in a world that's sawing logs.
Certainly seems that way, doesn't it? Randy, GWAT vet, tell me this isn't a slap to the face.
Well, it is all of us, regardless, but again, like Jeff said, and we've been saying this for a little while now, but still there's a lot of people that don't want to believe it. It's just a fact. And with all the federal agencies turning a blind eye, now the local authorities and all the states are doing the same thing because they're not hearing it from above. So it must not be true. But here, all the evidence and all this stuff is right out in front of us.
Yeah. So that sets up S2 pretty good. S2, why are the feds telling states, counties, and local PDs that the warning that Joe Kent put out from the National Counterterrorism Center is bullshit, and that there's no threat of 9/11 2.0 or Al-Qaeda attacking us amongst this whole Islamic army?
It's the same echoing reason that I've said for a long time, is because the intel community agencies have siloed themselves and have always been trying to do one-upsmanship on each other, and their egos won't let them share intelligence between each other. So they have to be the ones, the FBI has to be the ones that gets to go out and tell the local law enforcement, hey, this is going on, because obviously the CIA is not going to do it, and the DNI is not going to do it. And NCTC, they put out bulletins, but if the FBI is running around telling them that, disregard that's bullshit, then the local law enforcement tends to believe them because they're getting their money from the government.
Yeah. So I average between 300 and 500 legitimate emails per day. I respond to approximately 80% of them just because I run out of time. I already work 16, 17, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, which, by the way, is an opportune time for me to mention this. If you DM me on any platform, there's a 99.999% chance I'll never see it. I do not have time to do all of that. So if you send an email to support@survivaldispatch.com, or if you become a guardian, you'll be included in our signal chats. If you tag me there, much higher possibility of me seeing it, but no guarantee that I will see it 100%. And the reason I mention this is because of what S2 just said. I am bombarded on a daily basis with exasperated people in law enforcement, firefighters saying, my boss doesn't believe this is going to happen. And is there any way you could provide us with additional information to get them on board? So we've had some people step in, like Ryan Geho, former CIA and former Department of State, et cetera, et cetera. We actually got through to one in the Carolinas where the chief said to this officer who wrote to me initially, said, well, the feds aren't giving us any information. So if the feds aren't giving us any information, it can't be real. Ryan went to them and took a whole bunch of information he had and that we had given to him as well. And they realized that the threat is legit, but the vast majority of American law enforcement is not only not prepared, they don't even know about this stuff. It's been swept under the carpet. And unfortunately, they're going to be the biggest targets of 9/11 2.0. And when 9/11 2.0 kicks off, we will essentially become the Middle East, where we'll have frequent terrorist attacks the rest of our lives, our kids' lives, grandchildren's lives, and potentially well beyond that. You can't let a gazillion terrorists to walk across your border like the old Biden admin did and expect there's never going to be any repercussions from that. That's just pie in the sky thinking. So with that being said, tonight's topic is, how do you build lasting governance after 9/11 2.0? And basically coming up with new structures for self-rule, create some element of stability in a highly fractured nation. So we've discussed this ad nauseum in the lead up to tonight's main topic, but the intelligence continues to reveal an ever increasing threat of coordinated terrorist attacks across multiple American cities simultaneously, far exceeding 9/11 1.0. And as Christians and real Americans, to quote my good friend Randy Nance, because we're the real Americans and the other assholes in this country who think they're Americans are not Americans. We have a responsibility to prepare for these scenarios. And, that's for our families, communities, as well as constitutional principles. So the balance of tonight's discussion is going to focus on practical steps towards securing self-governance when traditional institutions are completely overwhelmed and get flattened. So as per usual, we have 5 segments from the main topic. Segment number 1 is imagining the unthinkable, what 9/11 2.0 really looks like. We don't need to add anything more to what we've added to the conversation already. We kind of got ahead of ourselves thanks to Apex Guard's, super thorough post amongst the other ones. So I'm just going to go to a couple quick questions for the guys, and then we're going to pivot into segment 2 pretty quickly. Jeff, I want to come to you first. I'm curious what your thoughts are, and how do you think the average American or the average guy or girl on the street is going to react to those first frantic minutes, when bombs, machine guns, sirens are blaring, social media has got all kinds of stuff that nobody knows if they can believe it or not. How's the average American going to react to this?
They're going to go into condition black. Anybody who's close enough to see it at first hand, yeah, they're going to freak out. The GWAT vets won't, the police won't, the military won't, but the average Joe on the street who works at an insurance company office or is the manager at a restaurant somewhere, they're just going to lock up. They won't know what to do because they haven't thought about what to do. They have their routines and it's going to disrupt it, and they're just going to go off the rails.
So before you go, Randy, this is an opportune time for a reminder. If you learn nothing else from this 144 episode series that we're doing, again, you can watch individual episodes. You can watch them in any order or not. They all stand on their own. They're all predicated on post 9/11 2.0. if you retain nothing else but this one thing, if you find yourself on the X during that initial attack, get as far away as fast as you possibly can. Do not seek assistance from first responders. Number one, many of them will not be first responders. They'll be the sleeper cells, the terrorists dressed up as first responders. Number two, the secondary attack is planned where they attack a soft target and then they just sit and wait for first responders to show up. And when the first responders show up, the secondary and tertiary attacks are even more significant because they want to kill those first responders. If nothing else, just do that. Just get as far away as you possibly can. Don't stop to talk to anybody, whether they look official or not. Randy, I'm going to ask you the same question just because it's a good question. I think Jeff nailed it as far as condition black, but tell me how, as a GWAT vet, how you think people like yourself are going to react.
Well, you'll have a fair amount that'll just probably, you know, within a matter of moments, kick back into the same old thing. But, you know, there'll be some that are probably at risk or have had other issues or other conditions, you know what I mean, that may not be. But I think the GWAT veterans, it won't take very long for them to figure out what's going on at all.
So let me ask you another question, just because I want to make sure we nail this first part of the segment. But if these attackers blend into crowds, Randy, they've got fake IDs, they've shaved their beards off. Is there anything that you can think of that the average person could use to identify them as, holy shit, that's one of them? That's a jihadi.
Well, I think we mentioned it before, you know, they can blend in all they want, but they're still going to be doing something differently. They're going to look differently. They're definitely going to be looking around. Like people running, or like if you're in a crowd and everybody's going one direction, the person moving the other way might be someone of interest, right? Or if they're just standing around watching, you know what I mean? But my point to that is they'll be acting differently in some manner. They always do. And there will be a little bit suspicious in whatever they're doing. And that's what you'll pick up on. If you're lucky, maybe they get nervous and start sweating, you know, and they just look odd. But, you know, they may not, depending on, apparently they're going to be doing drugs, so that may not be a factor either.
Right.
But they will be acting differently. Something will be odd. You know, we've talked about they'll probably have been here, so I kind of doubt they'll have foreign clothes on or shoes. You know, that could also be an indication. But I would say going off based off their behavior is going to be your best bet.
Yeah, good input, Randy. The only thing I would add to that is potentially if you hear them speak, you might catch an accent that indicates that they're, you know, not our part of the world. It's the only other thing I could think of, Randy.
Yeah.
But S2, I want to come to you here because, I mean, you're an intel guy. You absorb massive amounts of data on a daily basis. Based on past attacks, is there any early signs, you know, from intel chatter or anything else that would potentially tip the situation off to the good guys, including us, that holy shit, it's imminent, it's fixing to happen?
Everything will go quiet for about the first
storm.
Yeah, about 2 weeks beforehand. Chatter will go quiet.
Very interesting. How many people are going to pick up on that?
It depends. The people that are monitoring it will probably pick it up very quickly. The people that don't have a clue, they don't even know this is going to happen. So they're just gerbil-brained idiots running around. But
Fair
yeah,
enough.
about 2 weeks before, I'd say a week to 2 weeks before anything's about ready to pop off, all of the chatter coming out of the propaganda channels will go quiet. There will just be a weird air in the air that you'll feel something is off. It was kind of like, you know, we didn't see 9/11 coming, but we've always known there was something coming. So I really have a hard time explaining this because my empathic abilities to feel things around me, and it's not something that I can teach.
Yeah, I get that. Just want to
But
point
that's going to be your main signal, is everything will go quiet.
Good point. I just wanted to point out Father Duck's got a legit comment here with regards to Starbucks in Central Florida being full of these guys. I don't go to Starbucks, but I definitely go by them and see what's going on there. One more question for you, S2, before we move on to segment number 2. What's the biggest hole as far as law enforcement's concerned that's going to exacerbate the damage done by this?
Lack of training, lack of preparing, running mass CAS drills, not interfacing with other law enforcement agencies within the county, such as sheriff's departments and police departments, not making hospitals aware, not running drills for mass CAS intake. And then you'll also have the police officers themselves that would not expect this, that they'll be initially overwhelmed with all of this as well, being they're kind of in the first responder field. So they're going to have time to take a step back and assess the situation as well, because they haven't been paying attention.
Jeff, I got to come back to you. Super fast question. What are the chances that first responders go into condition black themselves, not just civilians? You're on mute.
Yeah.
Take a shot. Take a shot.
I think it's pretty good because this is something they haven't trained for.
Okay.
A lot of the cops won't, but a lot of the COVID cops probably will. They've never seen anything remotely like this. They haven't trained for anything remotely like this. And their life experience hasn't prepped them for anything like this. I mean, these aren't guys that were in the military in Afghanistan or Iraq and came back to become police officers. These are guys who graduated from high school, got an associate's degree at a community college, and went straight into the local PD.
Yeah, like Acorn Cop here in Florida.
Exactly, Acorn Cop.
You've got pre-2020 cops who are dwindling rapidly in numbers. You got post-2020 cops. Yes, there's always outliers, meaning that some of them are good, but on the whole, as Jeff just pointed out, they're severely undertrained.
Well, and you look at EMTs. They're used to dealing with trauma, but they're not used to being shot at.
Right. Yeah, good point. And Randy, being a former paramedic, could relate to that, I'm sure. So segment number 2 is ground zero chaos. So the stuff I already alluded to as far as hitting emergency services and infrastructure hard. So basically right off the bat in each of these cities, hospitals are going to be overflowed in the blink of an eye. There will be, walking wounded everywhere, bleeding, arms blowing off, legs blowing off, all kinds of terrible things. You're going to have power grids flickering in and out because they plan physical attacks on substations. You're going to see ambulances stranded in gridlock where nobody's getting anywhere, and that's going to cost lives there. You're going to see people like, Randy was a paramedic before he was a Green Beret, where they're going to have to triage people like they never have before. They will have to make decisions on the spot of, I'm going to help that person, but we just can't help this other person right now because their chance of survival is so low or something along those lines. So we already have shortages in most jurisdictions for firefighters and cops, especially cops. We're running somewhere around 2/3 capacity nationally as far as how many cops we need across the country. And this is because of the bullshit defund the police, BLM rhetoric and hate that was, thrown towards cops. I sat with 4 retired NYPD 2 nights ago at Mar-a-Lago, and all 4 of them said that they don't even recognize their city, and they work their asses off, put their lives on the line, and to have the hate thrown in their direction is unreal. And here's a follow-up to that. A couple of those guys were 9/11 1.0 responders who ended up with cancer as a direct result of the work that they did on 9/11 1.0. And yet we've got these lunatics in our country, the unreal Americans, not the real Americans like us, the unreal Americans who've done tremendous damage there. So anyway, yes, sir.
Troll alert.
Who's that? On what platform?
Look in the chat, or private chat.
It's YouTube.
All right. Wolfgang Felix.
Yep.
Good. Just I need like that thing that we had when we were kids, puts up like plays a little bit of music on screen while the next stuff is being queued up there.
Do, do, do,
So
do,
yeah,
do,
thank you. And then you got to go. This was a test of the emergency broadcast. True story. It is against the law to play that video of this is a test of the emergency broadcast system when if you do a video and you publish it on YouTube or anything else, because the thought is that it could trigger some people to think that there's an actual emergency happening.
Oh boy.
I shit you not, look it up. So anyway, moving on from there. Here's the thing with this Wolfgang Felix dude that we just had to kick out. High probability that it's a bot, that it's an AI bot. And if it's not an AI bot, high probability that it's a paid shit disturber. Most of these people, when you go and look at them, they signed up for whatever the platform is 2 weeks ago. They have no followers. They follow about 10, 15 people, and they're just bomb throwers, nothing more.
Yep.
So, but they make the other misfits amongst us think that they're larger than they actually are numbers wise. So back to first responders here, where the probably the best word to use that I haven't used yet tonight is those secondary attacks are ambushes on our first responders. So let's add a little bit more to this. They're going to go after things like water mains, cell phone towers. They'll take out the power in entire neighborhoods, again, by vandalizing the substations. We have 55,000 substations in this country. Virtually none of them have any level of physical security. When you look at the buckets and the transformers, that's an 1/8 of an inch mild steel. Pretty much any round that's traveling over 2,000 feet per second is going to punch through it. They have mineral oil or other oils inside for cooling. That drains out, poof, gone. The whole substation's down and everybody that's connected to it. So again, you've got multiple different horrific angles happening here. So Jeff, I mean, you're the engineer amongst us here. What happens to the 911 infrastructure when all of this stuff is going on? Power's going down. Yeah, I'm sure they have some backups, but then if the power goes down and the natural gas doesn't have enough pressure to fuel their generators, they go down. We've probably got attacks from these like SIM card farms that we've seen.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of them do have backup generators, but there are different legs in the system which don't. I mean, a lot of it depends on, a cell tower. Most cell towers have generators at the base, but they have to connect to landlines, to fiber optic or something like that. And if that goes down, it doesn't matter what your cell tower says. It can only talk to within range of it. My wife was shopping yesterday and the power went out. We lost power to 18,000 customers in here. And she said it was freaky because she was in the grocery store at the time and the power went out. She goes, it was just so dark. It was just like, and if that had been an attack, those people are just freaking out because they just froze because they didn't know what to do. They couldn't see where to go. But yeah, it's going to impact a lot of stuff. There are backup generators for critical systems. Hospitals have them. Police stations should have them, but they only have so much gas or diesel on hand. And if they're natural gas powered, that only works until the natural gas compressors go down. So it won't be instant, but if they don't get it fixed quickly, it will cascade.
So while we're on this same topic, what happens if these guys use VBIEDs to attack things like bridges, overpasses at critical junctures? That throws another whole monkey wrench into things.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got bridges over rivers or big canyons, yeah, that could be a big problem. If you're in a fairly flat area and there's an overpass that gets taken down, it's relatively easy to route around those, but it will cause chaos and it will cause traffic snarls. The only advantage, if you can call it that, is on day 2 or 3 or 4, people aren't going to be going anywhere. So those traffic jams will probably go away with them because people are just going to hunker down at home. So EMS, military, police should be able to get around fairly easily. But then if you're a terrorist, those who are moving now become your targets.
Yeah, I was especially thinking during, that initial first wave of just how it would disrupt emergency services. But Randy, I know that you've spoken with regards to the fall of Baghdad before, but this is a great comment from Elvis here. There'll be crime like we've never seen before. Zombies bombarding all stores, murders. It will be tremendously bad. I'd like to just have you speak to that again because you have firsthand experience when this sort of thing happens.
Well, I think you're right because it's a human nature thing, right? I saw it in Baghdad, but as I've mentioned every time, it's not an Iraqi thing. We would be the same way. In this country, it would be the same way. Like if all of a sudden New York City, there was no rule of law and there was really no rule of authority, the police were gone, there wasn't that many military around. Look at what they've done even when there is. We can just look back in the last few years, what's happened in New York City or in some of these riots, whether it was Minneapolis, we can go to LA, the summer of love in 2020. Look at what those people did, times that by a million. You know what I mean? Because the day that Baghdad fell and there was no more rule of law or authority around, people came out of the woodworks. And I've mentioned it many times because it's true. The level of looting I saw was on a biblical level. I mean, every street was full of people, cars, trucks, donkeys, carts, everything you can imagine. And they were loading up and they were stealing everything out of every single building, everywhere. And I mean, when I say that, I mean, every building, everywhere. There was nothing safe. And this is what happens when that happens, because that's what people do, and we won't be any different. So I think that, if something like that happened, and certainly in some of these bigger cities, you're going to see all that looting that we've watched recently, people empty out Targets and other kinds of stores and Apple stores and all that. That's exactly what you're going to see. With a matter of 3 days, there will be nothing left. That's how many people will come out.
Every time you speak on this subject, Randy, all I can think about is people beating the shit out of each other for a TV on Black Friday. And now imagine that there's no food on the shelves.
Well, I told y'all about the woman carrying the old woman with the that had her fancy bathtub that she carried. I guarantee you for a couple of miles down the street. I saw it myself. But one of the other weirdest things I saw was, and it's relevant to this topic, was a brand new, really nice generator, right?
Okay.
And there were two creeps trying to take it. And then it just came down to two men out of one man from each group. And it was the saddest affair if I saw a grown man fight that I ever saw in my life. Neither one could throw a punch. They couldn't even really slap. So what happens? Neither one can really do any damage to the other to make them go away. So what did they do? Then they both took turns demolishing the generator.
Unreal.
So since neither one of them could take it, they just decided to both take turns destroying the thing before then they both moved on, and now it wasn't worth. And it was a brand new, very nice, very, very nice generator. I'd like to have one right now.
Yeah,
in fact.
no doubt.
But that you will see that. You will see that. It'll be worse than the shows and things that we've seen, and even on the news where people at Christmas time or on Black Friday getting a fight over the last toy or whatever it is that they're trying to buy. That will also be magnified quite a bit.
Yeah, right. Before I go to S2, just another quick anecdotal. When Hurricane Charlie hit us in 2005, there were scumbags going around with these shitty lawnmowers they bought off of Craigslist in the middle of the night. They would come up to a house whose generator's running. They would start the lawnmower, turn off the generator, walk away with it. If the person woke up, they'd be, oh, the generator's still running. Then they get up in the morning, there's no electricity, anything. They've been pulling off the generator, and they go outside and find this piece of shit lawnmower because some scumbag stole the generator. So food for thought to people. Protect those sort of things as best as you can. As to two different sides to this question or angles. Simple drills that people should be running at work so that they can get out of Dodge as fast as they can, as well as drills that you think should be run in schools, whether it be sheltering in place or otherwise. I'm not a big fan of this, run, duck, hide bullshit, but I'm curious what your thoughts are in both scenarios: work offices, schools, what drills are worth doing to prepare people for this?
Well, let's start off with the problem to begin with.
Okay.
The drills that I would recommend, I would say there's probably zero probability that anybody is trained in evacuation techniques,
Makes sense.
particularly armed evacuation techniques. And that's the first thing that I would teach is if you were in a situation where you're in an office setting or even in a classroom setting, you need to know where your exits are. You need to have a planned, you need to have at least two planned routes of escape. Unfortunately, within schools, you don't have, let's say if you're in a long hallway, there's only a couple of ways out of that hallway because they don't make it so the windows open anymore because you had stupid kids that were throwing shit out the windows.
Hmm.
So they basically have bolted up the windows now. So you're going to have to break something, and they probably have impact proof glass for that kind of stuff to keep thieves from breaking in. So you only got two effective ways out of there. So you're going to have to figure out what your evacuation routes are going to be. And the minute you hear something pop off, you get the kids up and you get them moving. You put them in line with each other. You have one behind the other, and they're grabbing the belts of the person in front of them. And as an adult, you tell them, you grab my belt and you don't let go, and you lead them out of there. And that's the same drill that I would run with adults too. But
Okay.
you have with adults in an office setting, if you've got somebody that's armed, he should be the point man on that, and he should be going on and running recon ahead of ahead of the group that you're trying to lead to safety. Like I said, unfortunately, the training to react is what's going to be required. And there's a zero probability in most scenarios that there's anybody in those situations that are trained to do this.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Back to Sun Tzu again, right? Human beings never rise to the occasion. They follow their level of training. I know that's paraphrased, but it's true. And that would be what causes people to go into condition black. So, but I think the time for training, that window is almost closed. As far as training is concerned, if you don't have stop the bleed under your belt, I would get that done as fast as you possibly can. And if you do have the financial means to hire somebody to teach you drills, especially CQB related stuff, I would do it now because time is growing very, very short to prepare yourself. So we're into segment 3 now, and this is the ripple effects hitting the economy and other aspects of our society. Again, as we've said right from the beginning, 9/11 2.0 is not one and done. 9/11 2.0 means that we will now have terrorist attacks on a regular basis across the country. A good indicator of this is look at all the false hoaxes, bomb threats, active shooter threats that have been going on for months now. It's to the point where most people aren't even paying attention to them. Those are dry runs. They're probing exercises so that they can see how long does it take the cops to get there, what does their SOP look like, standard operating procedure, where are people evacuated to, like the one in Times Square that was a few months ago. The NYPD made everybody exfil in one direction, which just sets up a brutal fatal funnel for terrorists to slaughter those people. So all of those exploratory events, there's a reason that that's been happening. So the markets are going to be shut down, just like 9/11 1.0 when Wall Street shut down for a week, although it'll be longer this time.
Yeah.
Supply chains are going to be fucked. Pardon my French, but they are going to be in really bad shape. Everything supply chain wise these days is automated through these things called 3, 4, and 5 PL systems. So third party logistics, what that means is that stock hits a certain level, a PO is automatically cut to the distributor. A bill of lading is set to the logistics company. If it's not one and the same for the distributor, everything's automated. There is no, dead tree format, meaning paper format backup for any of this stuff. So grocery stores, for example, there are some who have maybe a week or two, but the vast majority of grocery stores have 3 days of food on the shelf at any particular point in time. That will disappear very quickly. And at the end of the day, we're never more than 3 missed meals away from complete anarchy. So again, the supply chains are going to be screwed. You're going to have truckers who want to be with their families. You're going to have truckers who want to get home. You're going to have truckers can't get fuel. for all kinds of reasons. The supply chain for the fuel has gotten screwed up, or there's no electricity to run the pumps, so they can't get it that way either. So the supply chain is going to be in rough shape. And if we learn nothing from Charlie 19, that's the one lesson that we should have learned. You're going to have people losing their jobs, losing their paychecks, not going to work, not sending their kids to school. And if you think of the compounded effect of that day after day after day, think of all the Americans who live paycheck to paycheck and don't have any preps stacked up. They're not just going to sit there with their thumb up their ass saying, woe is me. They're going to come out just like Randy and Jeff and S2 have mentioned. So now you're going to end up with these communities completely, going to hell in a handbasket. And you'll hear everything from rumors of clashes between different groups to real clashes between different groups. But by the time it gets to you, it's like when we were in kindergarten, I said to S2 purple, and he said to Jeff green, and he said to Randy yellow. And by the time it got to the end of the line, it was some other color. That's going to be the same thing for people who don't have access, say, to the interwebs or otherwise, because of various pieces of infrastructure being taken down. So, Jeff, question for you. How long do you think it would take for gas prices to double in 9/11 2.0? Like, or is there even going to be that much gas for people to buy?
Yeah, I think the bigger issue is, are you going to be able to get gas at all? Power goes out and gas stations can't pump gas. Okay, so there you have it. Then there'll be a black market where people will sell it, and it will double or triple in price. Probably within, if the power goes out, it'll double and triple in price almost immediately. And it'll be, you bring a 5-gallon, jerry can and $100, and we'll talk. Other than that, go away. Because you would need to run power. You'd have to have a generator and run power to the pumps, or have an above ground tank that you can draw from. And people are going to try and fill up their cars. They're not going to be able to. The gas pumps are going to be shut down, which means you have all these cars sitting in lines that have very little gas to begin with, and then they're going to run out. And then you've got this gridlock of dead weight cars surrounding the gas station. So even if the power comes on, you're going to have to get tow trucks to move them.
Yeah, I think that's legit. Second question for you, Jeff. Is there anything you can think of that local businesses, any way they could band together to try and keep their shelves stocked without waiting on FEMA or any other agency to try and restore the basics?
Well, that will only work if you've got local suppliers. I mean, if you've got a bakery that can bake bread, if you've got, some place that cans vegetables, but most places don't have that within, 100 miles. Almost all Campbell's soup is made in frickin' New Jersey. So if you want Campbell's soup, that's where it comes from. And the cities in particular are not close to the sources of food. Small town America, yeah, that'll work out. There are farmers there. There are people who grow their own food and have their own crops, and maybe even have their own, processing plants. I know that was true in Arkansas. There were pickle factories and a frozen strawberry place and things like that. But if you're in a big city, there's not going to be any of that. If you're in New York, the closest source of food is going to be probably central Pennsylvania, upstate New York. Connecticut doesn't produce squat for food. New Jersey is called the Garden State. It's not anymore. So yeah, they're going to starve.
That's bad. No good news out of it whatsoever. Randy, when schools shut down for weeks on end, what does that do as far as compounding things? Because I don't think that people are going to want to send their kids to school anyway, because we're going to see schools being hit. But if their kids aren't going to school, whether the schools are shut down or they're not sending them, do they want to go to their job even and leave their kids home alone, unprotected? I mean, I think that it's a bunch of dominoes that fall as a result of this.
Well, if they take the power grid and there's no power, it's, people aren't going to be going back to school and work anyway. That's a fact. I mean, we would have to change things quite a bit for them to go back to curriculum like we did before there was electricity, or even shortly thereafter, where school was run a different way. They're gonna be able to do that, and I think that it just helps compound the fact, that people are going to be confused, going to be mad, they're going to be upset. There's going to be all kinds of rampant behavior, I suppose, that will occur with all of this. And I think if the power goes out, and we're talking about if it's the 9 substations where it's not going to come on for months, maybe even a year, and we may never see electricity like we had it before, that's going to change a lot right there all on its own. Yes, lots of people are going to starve too, because I go back to the same old adage where I know people have said this or that, but the truth of the matter is, even when we first settled this country, Jamestown, 2/3 of the people died within 3 months from starvation, because we didn't know how, at that point, they didn't have the skills to agriculture and hunt and all that stuff, of what it takes to actually live off the land when there is not a grocery store or a local farmer just down the road.
Yeah, well said. So S2, you've got, let's say, some unique knowledge in the financial / technical world that I won't go into, other than saying you have lots of knowledge in that particular area. Kids aren't going to schools. People aren't going to work. People aren't getting paychecks. How long before those people lose their homes?
Well, if there's a lot of ifs there, but if they're hitting the grids, they're hitting points on the grids that take down, I would say major data centers generally have backups to backup power supplies, so they can keep running. But eventually those will run out. But if they're hitting the grid, there's no way to transmit things across to the financial institutions to be able to do that. And on top of that, people losing their homes does require a bit of it requires a bit of a legal intervention, shall we say. And if the sheriff or whoever is designated to go out and evict people from their homes is too busy dealing with all of this stuff, I don't think they're going to really give a shit at that point. They've got bigger fish to fry. So I don't think if you have the digital systems that are shut down that can't transmit, you have judicial systems and law enforcement systems that are shut down, everything grinds to a halt. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. But nothing would surprise me with how evil some corporations can be, regardless of people's circumstances or the nation. So that's 3 segments down. We've got 2 more segments to go. I want to briefly mention that if you go to survivaldispatch.news, not .com, survivaldispatch.news, it'll take you to our Substack, which looks like this. When we are broadcasting live 7 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, you'll see the video just like you see it appearing at the top. When we are done streaming live, it will disappear, and the daily sit rep situation report will be at the top of the page. If you haven't seen a sit rep before, here's what it looks like. These are the written counterpart that goes with each episode each night. It's typically published midday or earlier each day. So for those people who don't have time to watch the podcast, or it's at the wrong time for their schedule, you could go here. We have all of our sources are available as well. And as I mentioned earlier, right now we are running a sale on annual memberships, 20% off, and it's because of ThreatWire. So John Wheaton has been knocking it out of the park with ThreatWire security bulletins. I mean, absolutely killing it. So we spun up a ThreatWire Signal channel as well, and we have multiple Signal channels. So when you sign up right now, it's only $59.99 a year, because you get the 20% off the annual plan, which already gave you a couple of months free. But we have 5 Signal channels, and there's a 6th one that's going to be announced on Thanksgiving. Why? Because we've had our content taken down from Patreon, Facebook, LinkedIn, CommiTube, and the list goes on. Signal is a distributed infrastructure. It's open source. I'm a programmer myself. I've reviewed their GitHub There are no back doors in Signal. Any vulnerabilities that you've heard of are what are called social engineering, where somebody's been tricked into giving up their username and password. That's not a vulnerability specific to Signal. That's what we call in the tech world a PEBCAC, PEBKAC, stands for problem exists between keyboard and chair. I know, not very nice, but that's what it's been referred to for many years. That being said, the Signal channels that you get access to, we have a group chat called the Guardians. There's all kinds of information in there, 12,000 messages per week on average. We have a read-only news channel called the Crusaders. We have a team of 12 out there populating that channel with a ton of great news sources. We have a new one for survival and prepping. It's an amazing how that one has taken off recently. You've got people sharing everything from recipes to firearms recommendations and everything in between. We have another read-only channel, which is the Survival Dispatch Emergency Notification System. So when you sign up as a Guardian, when we issue emergency notifications, they go to your email, they go to a member-only section of our Substack, they go to the SDENS channel on Signal, and they go to the POC-Link radios if you end up buying these. And for $399, you get 2 of these, free global coverage for the life of the device. So you don't have to pay an annual fee for the SIM card like you do for other ones. And even if your battery's dead or you're off grid at the time, the smartphone app will record the SDN messages and you can listen to them on your phone when you end up having service again. There's a bunch of other stuff. You get direct access to the SDN team. You get intel that we don't make public. You get behind the scenes content. You get our entire collection of Survival Dispatch Insider e-magazines. You get all of our sources. It's a pretty amazing value for what it costs. And by the way, somebody asked me, said something along the lines of, I wasn't vetted. Yes, you were. I pay a handsome sum of money to a company. I'm trying to remember their name now. I slipped my mind. Here goes my sometimers again. Clear something or other. But I run everybody's phone number through that. So is it perfect? No. But if a bad actor shows up in one of those background checks, then I don't allow them to have access into our group. So with that being said, let's get back on track here with segment number 4, forging a new playbook, core ideas for self-rule after the storm. So folks will step up with, call it neighborhood/backyard councils, hashing out everything from potentially rationing shares, watch rotations, because the intel's pretty clear that the door-to-door terrorist attacks are on the table post 9/11 2.0, just like 10/7 in Israel. So there's going to be a need for each of us to band together in our neighborhoods to have strength in numbers, guard and protect our neighborhoods. There's going to be rules that probably emerge based on the majority of people in a neighborhood, and some of you may like them, some of them may not like them. One of the things that I saw stirred up a hornet's nest in the conversation was somebody said, if I find out anybody in my neighborhood is hoarding food, we're going to take control of it and divvy it up. And I would highly suggest you don't do that somewhere like Florida, where we have stand your ground, because there will be a reckoning at some point in time for that sort of stuff. But I think it progresses from there into, call it old school town halls like we had when the West was settled. And all of those things will slowly get us back towards some element of stability. Granted, the follow-on attacks will continue well beyond our years and our kids and grandkids. So I think that there will be a bunch of real Americans like ourselves, because I agree with Randy, the people who burn the American flag, the people who hate America, the people who think you can cut off your dick and become a woman. There's no reconciliation there. These are not real Americans. They are completely diametrically opposed to us culturally, and they're also weak. And in the end of the day, the real Americans will take control of that sort of thing. So with that being said, Jeff, I'm curious what your thoughts are, because you're kind of like the grand poobah of preparedness in your neighborhood. If you have, lack of a better term, block captains, how do you think that they should handle disputes over things that are scarce, whether it be meds, food, or anything else?
With diplomacy, because if a neighbor says, I'm starving, give me your food, my first thing is going to be, okay, I might give you some, but my big question is going to be, why is your lack of preparedness a crisis for me? And why do you being lazy give you a right to my food when I wasn't being lazy? But you're going to get these people, they're hoarding food. No, they're hoarding their food, which is what we would call prepping. So you've got to kind of get out there and say, as if you're the block captain, so to speak, and they say, Bill's got tons of food and he won't share it. And you're like, Bill prepared. He saved that tons of food. The big question should be is, why don't you? And you don't have a right to his food. Just like if his wife died, he doesn't all of a sudden have a right to yours. Get over yourself and figure it out. Now, maybe go to him and ask him how if he's willing to help you, or if there's something you can barter for some of his food that you have something he needs, but you don't have a right to it. You can't give up on people's individual rights just because things got bad.
Jeff, do you think there's any possibility, say, of a charter being drawn up in these neighborhood groups where it has some element of, and again, that's not the terms I would use, but fair resource sharing in this situation?
I think fair resource sharing would be is if resources are coming in from outside the group somehow. If there are, there's rations available, there's food available, and somebody and the group gets together, pools their money and buys it, then you distribute that among the group. But you don't just go in and say, I'm hungry, I'm stealing your food. I know there's going to be a lot of people who will be tempted to do that. When they have children, it's going to be, and that's when you do the Christian thing and say, look, I will help you feed your children as best I can. But that doesn't mean I'm giving you all my stuff, because then you starve today or I starve tomorrow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So, Randy, I'm curious what your thoughts are as far as, I'm 100% positive that FEMA is not going to come and rescue people, and the state agencies aren't going to come and rescue people. So who is going to come and help people who are in need? And I'm not talking initially, I'm talking after the initial attacks, as far as people, having food, water, all the basics. Is anybody going to step up? And if so, who is it? Or is nobody going to step up and it's just going to be a free for all, every man for himself, or every community for themselves?
Well, I think it will come to that to some degree, right? I think that's exactly what it will be. Each community in every neighborhood it's going to come down to them protecting themselves. It's going to be your neighbors, right? People you go to church with. Those are the people that are going to help you, and you help them. But otherwise, I don't see that. I do see that. What you mentioned, FEMA. We know that Biden signed into law at some point during his time in legislation that basically, if something like that happens, they can come around and say, me and you prepped, and they know this. Now they're going to send the federal agencies over to your house to take control or possession of what you prepped to hand out to others, so that, try to make it fair. And I have no doubt that's what FEMA will be doing. They're not going to be there to help you. They're going to be there to find out what you have and what they can take to redistribute. So that will be some other things that you will have to navigate and know what to do, where to hide your stuff, how to hide it, and then what to tell them when they show up your door saying they know you have some, because that's what FEMA is going to do. That's exactly what FEMA is going to do.
Well, they've done it before. So yeah. I agree. So as to thinking back to previous crises, is there anything you can think of, like any principle that has kept these self-ruling groups / communities from splintering and going to hell in a handbasket? Is there anything in particular you can think of that people should include and call it their neighborhood charter or their MAG charter, whatever the case may be? And you're on mute.
You're asking me a tough one here.
Yes, I am.
I would say have the understanding that nobody comes in from the outside without prior vetting, and the vetting does not go on from within inside the so-called compound at this point. That's one thing that has to happen, and the entire organizational structure has to make the decision if somebody else is going to be coming in from the outside, and that includes any governmental or law enforcement individuals that may come along, because as we pointed out, if shit hits the fan, we don't know who these people are. They could have just gone out and stolen Barney Fife's uniform and put it on and said, "Hey, I'm here to help." So I would say the thing that should hold everybody together, and I really fucking hate this phrase. I swear I never want to hear it again. We're in this together.
Right. Fair enough. There's
right up until they slit your throat, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No kidding. So I would add that I hosted the CEO exchange for the SBA and UCF here in Florida for 8 years. And there were a number of groups, and they had dwindled and fallen apart. So I went to people when I first took over. I went to the people who quit and said, "Why did you walk away from the CEO exchange?" And they all said the same thing. We had no say over who was in our group, and I don't want to disclose sensitive financial information on my business to people that I don't know and don't feel comfortable with. So one of the rules that I put in place that went over really, really well is that a member could nominate a potential new candidate. That potential new candidate could come and have lunch with us, say for 2 or 3 meetings, and then we would vote on that particular individual. And if it wasn't unanimous, then nobody got to come in the group. And I'll give you a great example of it working. One of the guys, there was another member had nominated this guy who owned a marketing agency. And one of the other CEOs said, "That's my marketing company, and I'm not telling him all of my financial dealings. And that's it. I'm not voting for him." There was no argument, and the guy wasn't allowed in. So there's certain things like that you can put in place that are relatively easy. So moving on to segment number 5, rising from the wreckage and seeking, unity for the long haul. So I think you'll end up, we've discussed this before, but survivors will end up swapping war stories, during pop-up meetings. They'll forge bonds. Mike Glover and I discussed this at length last night. And I think that'll do a lot as far as keeping groups together. Like Mike said, there was a guy named Omar that they were in a firefight in Afghanistan. And to this day, they're the best of friends because they survived it together. So I also think that, good leaders will push simple things, simple wins, like fortified community gardens. There'll be instances like we discussed last night where your mag is cooperating with this mag, cooperating with that mag, mutual assistance group in different communities. And I think that there's strength in numbers at the end of the day, basically there. And over time, and it'll take significant time, but that type of mutual cooperation will eventually turn into a county vibe, a state vibe, and hopefully a federal vibe as time goes on. There'll be this connection of, holy shit, we survived this thing together and we've come back stronger than ever. So, Jeff, thoughts on how you could mentor somebody new to this topic as far as spotting sleeper terrorist threats without being the boy who cried wolf?
Yeah, it's probably going to be a tough, but I think as the crisis goes on, it actually might be easier than you think, because the initial wave of terrorists will probably end up being killed, and the secondary and tertiary waves are going to be probably less capable, because otherwise, if they were very capable, they'd been in the first wave. And they'll be a lot more paranoid because they're probably going to think, okay, everybody's looking for us now. Yeah. And I think their demeanor, their actions will give them away a lot easier than the first wave.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common thread there. So, Randy, let's say we've got, the grid going up and down like a toilet seat, and the internet is available, not available. What are your recommendations for a low-cost way for a community to stay in touch with each other without having to physically go knock on the door in case, there's marauders, sleeper cells, whatever, roaming the streets?
Well, that's a really good question, because it's, again, to me, it's going to come down to, is there power? What systems are up and working? Are you going to be able to use the POC link, or is it going to be straight line of sight stuff? And then again, line of sight also comes down to, is anybody else picking up that signal? And you wouldn't have to worry about normal folks, but maybe some people that are leading the charge, and then federal agencies for sure. They would do that. Point of fact, the little hand crank radio they gave us, a little shortwave hand crank that they gave us to give out to the Iraqis, were shortwave. And that's for when the power and everything was down, they were still able, they could crank this thing up and pick stuff up. The only problem with the ones we were giving out, the federal government made sure they were going to pick up the channels that we wanted them to hear. Right. They're going to hear the information.
Shocking.
Yes.
That's good though. And well, Dr. Fabian and I actually have a couple more installments of our comms videos coming up. And one of them is actually going to cover the device you just mentioned, the crank up shortwave emergency radios. They do, high frequency, very high frequency, ultra high frequency, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, seriously though, if you're just talking, that's what you want, because most likely nothing expensive is going to work. Most of that takes power and the system to be up for all that stuff to actually work. But the more manual it is, the better off you're going to be. But heck, even if it's your own neighborhood or what did the Indians do? They use smoke signals and all kinds of things, and light. You can use a mirror. There's all types of ways you can come up with ways to signal each other. Now community wise, you're going to need, if it's from county to county or city to city, obviously they're going to need a little more structure, and you're actually going to need some kind of radio or something to that effect. Because again, when the internet, so I don't know what the way it worked in Baghdad, right? After everything fell and there was no power, because we're just like everybody else. First thing we want to do, and we're coming to take it, like what we did in Karbala over the airport. For Karbala example, we watched the night before as we bombed the power station, right? And then it went down, and they knew there was a backup. So as soon as the backup came up, another barrage went out, and boom. The lights never came back on after that. Now, once they finally did, the way it works, and I would imagine we will go through something very similar, then they're going to have roaming power. So if it's a big city like New York City, there are going to be parts. These blocks will have power for this, for this increment of time, and then it's going to shift to these folks, and then it's going to continue on a rotation like that, where you won't have power all the time, or internet for that fact, but during the times that it's up, you will be able to use it. And at that point, maybe you can communicate. But, I'd hate to try to put out something. You'd have to really look into that, what a community could actually do, like if you're a city or a county, to communicate with the other ones. I would hope some of the stuff we already have in place that they will be able to use, whether it be a CB radio or an older radio, whatever. Maybe we get out and set up the antennas, right? I was thinking maybe I should buy one of those bags.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is something that's squarely in my wheelhouse, and as well, plus yours. And nothing beats shortwave HF in a Walking Dead situation. It doesn't require any infrastructure. So, number one, dual power generators that can run on gas or propane. Gas goes bad, has to be stabilized, octane booster, et cetera, et cetera. Propane tanks last forever. So, and I'm not giving you advice here. I'm just telling you straight up that you can run big propane heaters inside a closed-in structure while you're building it with zero concerns over carbon monoxide. I'm not giving you advice, but I have no problems whatsoever running our propane generator in our mudroom with the window cracked. I've run carbon monoxide detectors in there, and it's never been bad, but I keep the door closed. But propane will last forever, number one. Number two, portable solar panels. Get a couple of those as your backup to your generators. Then store the power in power stations, battery-powered power stations with built-in inverters. That way you can keep your radios charged up. So if you can afford to go shortwave HF, it is the bomb, except for one thing, and that's called the skip zone, for lack of a better term. Shortwave HF bounces off of the ionosphere, and you can get massive distances depending on the type of radio and rig that you're using. But what it can't do is that stuff that's 0 to 3 miles, and some locales 0 to 5 miles, because when it goes up and hits the ionosphere and comes back down, it's too far away from that range as far as being able to hit inside that skip zone. So you can complement it with ham radios like UHF, VHF ham radios, UHF, GMRS radios. Just keep in mind that all of those, including the shortwave HF, if somebody has the equipment, are not encrypted. The only way you can get encrypted is to do business class radios. We have them. We have Motorola's. The downside to it is you spend a lot of money and you don't gain any additional distance over what you would gain with the other ones. So you do get encryption, you do get channel hopping, but stand by for a lot more information coming up on the emergency radios Randy mentioned. We are putting together 2 packages. We don't sell equipment. Putting together 2 lists with links and everything for our recommendations for a shortwave HF package under $1,000, and a second one under $2,000 that will give you the ability to communicate far beyond anything else in a Walking Dead scenario. And those boxes that say a handheld radio is good for 25, 30, 35 miles, bullshit. That's in the salt flats under optimum conditions or bouncing off of a repeater network. And you can pretty much count on repeaters going to hell in a handbasket when this happens, when 9/11 2.0 happens. So shortwave HF is the bomb. It's the way to go. And then some other radios for close communication. My preference is business class because we get dedicated channels, we get encryption, we get channel hopping. So as to, I was going to ask you a question on a different topic, but speak to your experience as far as high frequency shortwave is concerned and who you've been touching base with lately around the country.
Oh, I've got my stuff dialed in. I'm hitting as far west right now. I mean, these are only ones that I've documented just through listening. I don't write everything down. I'm not a nerd in that way, but I'm hitting people as far west as Corpus Christi, Texas, from the East Coast here. I'm hitting people as far north as upper New York. I'm hitting every state in between on top of that, because I'll hear people out there talking and they announce who they are and where they're from. So I know what my range is at this point and what I'm hitting. In other states like Missouri and things like that, I've not heard any come up like that, but I'm sure that I can also reach people probably anything east of the Ohio River or the Mississippi River.
Yeah, and that's a good way of putting it, S2, because I've basically been telling people for quite some time that if you live in a coastal town, that whether it's West Coast, East Coast, bare minimum, you're going to be able to hit to the Mississippi River from one direction or the other. And if you spend a little bit more money, as you know, on more powerful rigs and antennas, this is a really bad pun, but the sky's the limit.
Well, two things I wanted to add into that discussion. So there is a new model radio out there that is consumer grade that actually does encryption now. It's called the DM32. It's put out by Bofang. They actually do have AES 256 encryption built into it. It is a DMR radio, so you'll have to figure out how to program it for DMR without having a DMR license, which is not that hard. And then the other thing is that if you're in need of power, you could build your own battery boxes out there with solar boxes, so that you can hook up Anderson connectors to a battery, and you'll be able to run your HF system on that.
Yeah. So just a caveat there is for the people who are the sad hams, whatever you want to call them. The UV32, I have that as well. It's not legal to have, as you know, S2 to have encryption on a ham radio, with the exception of business class radios. Personally, I'm with you. I have no problem with people using it, but the sad hams will come out of the woodwork and say that you're breaking.
Well, the point being is that the point being is if you have those radios within your group, you can basically pick a frequency and program 2 or 3 frequencies in the setup like that. They're not going to monitor every single frequency out there. So you just got to pick an obscure frequency and tell the sad hams to go fuck off.
I may have done that on 1 or 2 occasions myself. That's so funny. All right. So at the end of the day for this episode, the threat environment has evolved dramatically since 9/11 1.0. Our enemies are now capable of executing these complex coordinated strikes. They started before Mumbai 2008, but that's considered kind of like the textbook example. They did it again in November of 2015 in Paris. And we are just not equipped at the law enforcement or military level to handle what this threat represents. And shame on any federal agent that has gone to state and county agencies and told them that the threat's not real. I mean, again, at the end of the day, whether you want to believe the specifics of the intel or not, you have to be a complete and utter moron / retard to think that you can let all kinds of special interest aliens and bad actors into our country by throwing the border wide open, and that there'll never be any repercussions as a result of that. It's just insanity to think like that. So right now, as far as immediate priorities for everybody watching, if you haven't started this already, get your comms in order. The old adage, 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none. When you're in my seat, it's more like 20 is 19, 19 is 18, blah, 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 backups to backups to backups. But get your comms in order, get your water in order, stock up on bottled water if you have to, stock up on products like Sawyer minis so that you can filter and purify water. Start developing friendships, relationships, people in your community who have essential skills. Better to do that now rather than later. And I would start looking at a mutual assistance group, neighborhood watch group, et cetera, yesterday. You have a small window potentially of opportunity to accomplish that. But if you end up on your own post 9/11 2.0, your odds aren't good. They're not good at all. So with that being said, this is my favorite part of the podcast. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right. And we get to go to the Carnivalt hero of the day. Carnivalt.com, 25-year shelf life, freeze-dried meat that has not been cooked. Everybody else cooks it. So when you cook it a second time, it's like shoe leather and tiny little bites. This stuff is very high quality, 100% American, no mRNA, no histamines, no antibiotics. The bag's made in America. The O2 absorbers are made in America. And it's just a phenomenal product. What happens with meat when you freeze dry it, by the way, if it has fat content, it turns to jelly. And it will wreck whatever you put in the bag, including the meat itself. These guys have figured out how to crack that nut. It's got 0.05% relative humidity. You can reconstitute it in 5 minutes or so, and it's just phenomenal. Now, we thought preppers would go crazy over this, and they have, because this is a 6-ounce bag that makes 1.5 pounds of raw steak, which has 150 grams of real high-quality whole protein. My buddy Josh Bryant said, if you're taking like whey isolate and stuff like that, you'd need 75 grams of their protein to match what your body gets out of 25 grams of this. So it's a phenomenal product. You can see Randy's wearing his Carnival hat as well. We're all super big fans. Eat meat, code Eat Meat all together, 10% discount, free shipping over $99. We do not get an affiliate commission from that Eat Meat code. You get 10% off. We get a stipend from the guys at Carnival that we appreciate very much to help offset our expenses. ClearStar just came to me. ClearStar is the company that we pay to do the background checks on people's phone numbers. Anyway, with that being said, a hero just seconds before the train arrived. A good Samaritan jumped onto the tracks to save a man in a wheelchair. 40 seconds.
Approaching the station, please stand away from the platform edge. There is stop downtown local 6, train to Woodland Bridge City Hall. Approaching the station, please stand away from the platform edge.
Watch that third rail. It's a bitch.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be careful of the gap between the platform and the
Man, kudos to this guy jumping in. That's definitely a real world hero right there. This next one, Tim Smith posted it in one of our signal chats today, and it's a repeat. We've played it before as a reader submitted story, but this is so germane to our conversation of 9/11 2.0. Gotta play it. Muslim Brotherhood boot camps in the UK. Wonder what they are training for. 39 seconds, and I'm going to want to hear your comments from all three of you before we do the conflicted question.
Different images and thoughts.
Jeff, I'm going to come to you first on this one. Thoughts on that?
Once again, when people tell you who they are, believe them. You know, this isn't, that ain't a neighborhood watch group.
Yeah, that's well said. Randy?
Well, I'd say normally, you know, if you're doing some spiritual things and then taking care of yourself and staying fit, that'd be a good thing. But this isn't some martial arts class that's teaching people how to defend themselves when they have to. You know, I mean, these guys, you know, you look at that training, what else could it be for? They know a fight's coming because they're the ones starting it. They're the ones bringing it. And, you know, you look at what we're teaching our kids and what people are training here as opposed to what those folks are doing.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious.
Father Duck's on fire tonight, by the way. Those are sick, fanatical fucks. Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
Absolutely. S2, your thoughts on that training?
Oh, you're going to love my answer. So,
oh, hold on. Not safe for work language incoming. Just so you all know.
No. This is fine. This is really fine. In a not too distant past, I was a member of a group. We basically had Native American spiritual training integrated into certain levels of physical training and other things. So we were doing things very similar to what they were doing. Years ago, the initiate groups around the United States were a lot stronger than they are now. Nowadays, because of the spiritual falling away of Americans, we had a lot less people participating in that. We actually had a lot of older people that were participating in it versus where we used to have some of the younger folks, like the 17 to 25-year-old ranges, go in there. So we were doing a lot of those very similar things. We would get out there and we would do simulated knife fighting. We would do we had rolled up newspapers that we used because obviously we didn't want to cut anybody or anything, but we would go out and do Greco-Roman wrestling, those types of things out in the middle of a field. So that really didn't look unusual to me because I've done that. So what I see that there is I see that as community building. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, communities and tactics and all that stuff. So S2, take it away with the conflicted question.
All right, I have to put my glasses on because I'm old. So, okay, here we go. I want to see some smashed thumbs and likes and all of that good stuff. So here we go. Sebastian is faced with a decision to continue to serve his country or take care of his family. Where would you personally draw the line between serving society and taking care of your family? Are you a traitor to your profession if you leave your post to protect and care for your family?
All
Chris,
righty.
you're first.
Not a problem. Family first. That's it. That's all I got to say. Family first. Jeff, you're on mute, Jeff.
Take a shot.
If you can do your job and still be close enough to take care of your family, fine. But if they say, yeah, we need you to go 1,000 miles away, that's when you go, sorry, got to take care of the kids.
Yeah, exactly. Randy.
Well, I know we've talked about this, what we speculate may happen with actual law enforcement if when that does happen. And I think what we will see, and I'm like everybody else, because at some point, whether you're in the military or you're in the police, I've never been in law enforcement, but I would assume that it's probably the same thing, right? Because we hear the same messaging. When you're in the military, they tell you, you need to take care of your family so you can take care of your job, right? You can't fully do your job even when you're deployed, when you're having a lot of problems back at home. So if you can't take care and you don't secure your family, you're not going to be able to do your job. So I think that answers the question. But what we all really want to know is what's going to happen is at a certain point, the fighting or whatever will get to a point where, being a police officer doesn't even matter at this point. You know what I mean? So why would you be at work when you should be back taking care of your family? And I think that's how that will kind of play out. But me, I'm with y'all. I'm going to go take care of my family first, because what are you going to do if you lose your whole family? I mean, we all know the answer to that.
Yeah, exactly. S2, you're batting cleanup.
God, family, country.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Not too complicated, right? So that's the end of tonight's broadcast. One last reminder to go to survivaldispatch.news. 20% off annual memberships until midnight tomorrow night. Survivaldispatch.news, code TW20, or just use one of the sign-up links below, and that'll automatically apply the 20% discount. Get access to all 5 of our private signal channels, direct access to the SDN crew. You get emergency notifications, behind-the-scenes content, and more. We will be back tomorrow night at the usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully, Clede will be feeling better, and will be able to join us for our next episode in the Long War series, which is called Hope Beyond the Ruins. And the theme will be the promise of renewal. Summary, essentially, rubble to resilience, how faith, unity, and vision can build a stronger future. Want to thank everybody out there who supports us as a Guardian, our sponsors, especially Carnival and CCW Safe. I think that's it. Between now and tomorrow night when we come back, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. God bless America.
God bless America.
And enjoy the real American closing video.